Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path and welcome to another video. Today we're going to the Tallarook State Forest. This was our first visit, so we actually went down the Goulburn Valley Highway and entered from the eastern side on the main road. The intention was to follow the main road down and then the two-wheel drive track and then just a small section on the four-wheel drive track down to the campground and then out via the largely two-wheel drive section on the other side. So just to set the scene, I've convinced Sharon to squeeze this in, but on the way to go and visit a good friend of ours that we haven't seen for a long time, I've said, yeah, look, there'll be no real four-wheel driving. I just want to go and check out the reservoir and the campsite. Largely two-wheel driving all the way. And never having been to Tallarook before, left it at that. Had a quick look on the HEMA maps, which, as we all know, don't give you a lot of indication of track difficulty or condition. And that certainly came back to bite me today on this trip. So those that follow the channel will have seen the highlights from this that I posted soon after the trip. But look, it all starts out pretty well. You know, it's a gravel, almost a bitumen type surface. The main access road, certainly two-wheel drive. So, as I said, there was no intention here to actually have this as a four-wheel drive trip. It was more of a sightseeing, reconnaissance, future planning trip, and really hadn't expected to have any difficulties. So as you can see, we're following the main access track and then the main road, such as it is, down to the reservoir and one of the main camping areas. Look, there's heaps of camping areas in the Tallarook State Forest, and I'll come back to that another time. So as you can see, look, the track condition gradually deteriorates. At this point, it's still nothing that's overly concerning, and probably the biggest thing of note is that this was on the tail end of several days of pretty solid rain, and we're actually, as you can tell from the droplets there on the lens, we're actually getting some light rain while we were there. Now, had I known what I now know about West Falls Road, I wouldn't have gone this way. I would have gone in and out this way that we're going in now. So you can see there a private property on the eastern side there as we're heading largely north. So I haven't let the tyre pressures down at this point at all because we're not going four-wheel driving. Starting to notice here that the track is changing from a largely gravel-based track to more of a clay-based track. It's still not too slippery, even though it's clearly wet, and I still haven't let the tyre pressures down because we're not going four-wheel driving, remember? So the State Forest, it's actually quite pretty. Tallarook State Forest changes a lot in different areas. You can see evidence there. Somebody's come through on a trail bike prior to us, taking it pretty slow and steady because it was starting to feel a little slippery under the tyres, and because we're not going four-wheel driving, I wasn't going to get out and let the pressures down. Benefit of hindsight, as soon as it started to turn into more of a clay-based track, I should have got out and let the tyres down, but that would have necessitated admitting to the wife that we were in fact going four-wheel driving, which wasn't the intent. So this is getting pretty close. Massive big section of sheetrock here, getting pretty close to the falls and the reservoir. So the overflow from the reservoir flows down actually across the track and sort of into what was the old stone quarry where they quarried a lot of the stone for the reservoir wall, and then continues on from there. So definitely taking the easy line because I didn't want to get stuck because remember we're not four-wheel driving, and I hadn't let any air out of the tyres. Probably said that enough now. That hole has gotten markedly worse in the last couple of months since this was shot. But so far so good. Apart from being a little bit more clay and a little bit more slippery than expected, everything's pretty much on time. We're tracking well, and yeah, we're due to get to a friend's place in the early afternoon, just after lunch. So this is where the water from the reservoir actually flows down and over the rock and down into the quarry area on the right hand side there. So I didn't take as much footage as I would have liked. So I think I've dropped a photo in here. You can see just off to the left there, that's actually the reservoir wall. And you literally drive through the water that's flowing down here. There's a couple of different lines, so we just decided to park up on this one, looking most simple. So that's the actual quarry where they quarried a lot of the stone. You can see an old car body down in there. Somebody's had a really bad day. And that's it, just to the south of the reservoir. This is actually up at the reservoir wall, which is probably only 100 metres from where we just parked. You can see the lake there. It's quite a good sized lake. Back in the day when this reservoir was built, it originally was the water supply for Seymour and some of the other...
We've got option A on the right and option B on the left. A little push for time today, so I think it's going to be option A.
So yeah, as per the caption there, yeah, initially it looked like that other option was going to be easier, but it wasn't. So we've kept on this line, and as per the caption, probably should have turned around at this point, and everything would have been a lot more simple. But it's not the way it went. Everything looks simple and logical with hindsight. So it was a pretty easy climb just up this little rock step here. Tyres are nice and wet from the light rain that's been falling. And from there we headed up that track where you just saw the other footage of me walking. There's quite a large rut on the right hand side that we definitely didn't want to fall down into, so you can see it here on the GoPro. Again, doesn't really do anything for the depth, but that rut was hugely deep, so we've stayed right away from that, hugged the left hand line and managed to not hit that tree remarkably and sneak across and still get between these two metal posts here, sort of making our own line there a little bit. So from here, that's coming up from the waterfall past the reservoir. There's the lake, reservoir wall, there's the lake on the left hand side, and the campground, this particular one at least, on the lake is just up here. From what we could see, there's probably actually better campsites along the lake on the other side, whether they're official campsites or what, I'm not too sure. This campsite actually seems to be more set up for tent campers. You can see as you pull in here, a lot of the area is actually bollarded off, particularly on that water side. So designed for day use or tent campers. There's a fire pit there between those two tables, but you're certainly not putting a camper trailer or anything in there. Up here on the right is more of an open camping area. You can see that track there has certainly been dug out a little bit. This wasn't super flat, so again, wasn't something we thought was a fantastic camping area. You can see there's another fire pit area there. So if you're in a camper trailer or something and you could level that up, it'd be fine. But if you're tent camping on the ground, perhaps not ideal. So from here, the plan was it was a very short, sort of 1 kilometre stretch back up to East Falls Road or West Falls Road. And it was going to be really easy and we're going to be out. Straight away we hit clay. Again, even now I still have refused to admit that we're four-wheel driving, so I haven't let the tyre pressures down. Because again, in my mind I'm like, no, we're just going to get through this little bit of clay and then we'll be back on the two-wheel drive track and we'll be out of here quick, smart and no problems at all. And you can see from these ruts, it's definitely been well used and definitely been softer than it was even when we were here. There really wasn't a lot of traction to be had. Managed to make it up that first section by giving it a bit of juice. And this is sort of the beginning of the challenges for this day trip. You can see there how smooth the clay is, where we've basically just slid back. It probably looked like we were reversing back, but pretty much as soon as you get off the gas, you start sliding. And the more you slide, the faster you go, the more momentum you get, the further back you go. So at this point, I've gone, okay, we are actually four-wheel driving, a little late, I know, and decide to get out and let the tyre pressures down. Sharon decides she's going to go and capture some evidence of this not four-wheel driving trip that I promised her. So we've let the tyre pressures down to pretty much, I think, 20 psi all round. That's given us a bit more grip to get up out of those ruts, which has given us a little bit more traction. And at this point, I'm like, how much further can this really go on? As you can see there, not a lot of traction. The car's moving all over the place and throwing the odd bit of mud up on the bonnet. And this was really just a case of generally suggest that the car go uphill. There wasn't any precision sort of driving to be done here in terms of picking lines, because the car was very much sliding wherever it wanted to go pretty much with the camber of the track, and wherever it was inclined to get some traction and pull towards. And once you don't make it over one of these humps when the clay is this wet, it's really a case of going back to somewhere where you can get some traction and then giving it plenty of juice to get as much traction as you can to get up over that hump and line yourself up for the next one. So trying there to span that big hole and put the left tyre on the left side and the right tyre on the right, and ended up just dropping into it, but still didn't get up and over it. And again, as you can see, once you lose traction, I think there must have been a little bit of rock there, so warm the tyres up a little bit. So once again, it's a matter of reversing back until we can get some traction and try and get enough momentum to get up over this hump. Just made it. So here's a shot Sharon took with the Sony camera, sort of showing that same section. You can see a little bit more from outside just how much the car's actually moving around, because and how much it was bouncing around as well, because the GoPro with the inbuilt stability control sort of hides all that and smooths everything out for you. So that was the first go there. Reverse back, slide back. And try and find a spot to get a run up, and just give it enough juice to get up and over. Yeah, no traction there. See how much the car is actually moving around and bouncing around, sliding on this stuff. It was a fairly firm base, but the top was just like slick grease. You can see the tyres are all pretty well filled up. Again, trying to span that rut, ended up dropping the tyre in anyway. And reverse back and try and line up. So pretty much every one of these humps on this West Falls Road needed multiple goes just to get over, until we got to the point where we needed a winch. Once again, bit of a run up, try and keep it straight, but then the car kind of goes wherever it wants to go anyway. And even coming out of that, you can see the back end sort of fishtailing out there. Up over the next hump, that one wasn't too bad in terms of traction. See a couple of rocks, one there that we're just going over, and another one sort of halfway up this hump, trying to sort of make sure we don't hit something on that. And again, we've just kind of gone wherever the cars wanted to go. Here's a shot from the Sony, you get a better idea. And those wheels were kind of tilted left, but the track, the camera and everything has just pushed us into that bank anyway. And once we got on that bank, we're kind of stuck in those ruts, and I really couldn't get any traction. You can see they're all four wheels are pretty much spinning. Come back a little further. The whole time I'm trying to get off that bank, but I really just couldn't get off the bank, and so I had very limited visibility as to what was behind me. I couldn't see much out of the mirrors, so at this point we've gone, you know what, let's set up and let's just winch up over this one. So yeah, we've run the winch out to a good sized tree there. By this point I think we're pretty much already overdue at our friend's place that we're supposed to be going and visiting. So yeah, you can imagine how well that went down. So at this point I'm looking at the next two rises and thinking, that's it, we're just two more little hills and we're out of here. Unfortunately, I was set to be disappointed. Just watching that rock there on the front left as well as we're winching up there. Make sure those rear tyres were up and over. Pulled the winch back in, reset, and took off to drive the next section. And as I found out, that was not the end, that was the beginning of the next section. So I thought once we got to there, we're out. But no such luck. Flattened down initially for a little while, until we came to this next section, which again started off not too bad. Good firm base, slippery on top, and then as we came up around, it steepened up. The mud and clay got a bit thicker, the ruts got deeper, and it very quickly got quite interesting. So clearly we've got the front tyres in one set of ruts, the rear tyre is in the same, the rear right is in the same rut as the front left, and we're crab walking our way up this hill. Just trying to pull it up out of the ruts if I can. See the odd piece of mud there flying up. Keep in mind I run all terrains, not mud terrains. That probably would have made a difference. It may not have. I mean, the clay probably would have just clogged them up. So once again, we're kind of stuck. So second winch, my turn to run this one out, go and find a suitable tree. So as you can tell, this is just 200 meters past the last winch. And yes, I use a metal cable on my winch, and I really should handle that cable with gloves. I do have gloves, they're in the back of the car. I would recommend if you have a metal winch cable, you use gloves, because yes, it has spiked my hands from time to time. So just as we got set up, probably heard me there on the video footage, a number of trail bike riders sort of showed up, and really just want to make sure that they were aware there was a winch cable running up the track, and that they didn't try and ride down. So at this point, I'm thinking they can see what we're doing, they're going to sit there and wait. You can see how thick the mud is there on the tyres, and it was really quite hard. We couldn't really communicate with them. They've obviously got the bikes running, and they've got the helmets on. I'm in the car, Sharon's on the camera, and was trying to signal to them as well. And yeah, they sort of weren't talking to us a whole lot, so it was really a matter of trying to make sure they didn't get into the danger zone for the winch while the cable was under load. So I've sort of got one eye on what's going on with the winch and one eye on the trail bike riders. And I've stopped winching there, one to give the winch a break, and two because it looked like they might have been going to come down, and sure enough, they decided to start coming down. So there's a group of about 6 or 8 of them. I think it was just those 2 there that actually rode down to check out the track. Again, it was really hard to know what was going on. So restarted the winch. And just slowly worked our way up. Yes, there should be a dampener on that cable. No, I didn't have it with me. Because we weren't going forward driving. At least I had the tree protector with me. Lesson learned to always be prepared. And I've actually got a really good solution for carrying all my recovery gear with me that I've just set up recently that you'll see in an upcoming video. So once we got to here, we sort of winched as far as we could. We actually reset the winch, so the third winch is kind of a continuation of the second winch, because we certainly weren't going to be able to drive up and over this hill. Been really happy with the winch. For the curious, I run a worn Xeon winch. It's a little bit upgraded from the standard winch. It's an IP67 rated winch. Look, it wasn't that much more expensive, and I went that way just because I'd heard so many horror stories about people doing river crossings, not fully maintaining their gear. And look, frankly, I'm not great at maintenance. I do a little bit, but not as much as I probably should. And I've heard horror stories about winches seizing up. So at an IP67 rated, it's almost a fully waterproof winch, almost marine rated. So, and I've had it on the car now nearly 3 years, or over 3 years actually, just over. Been really happy with it. So certainly no complaints. So once we've gotten over that obstacle, we've been able to drive out. A little bit of persuading there. And once I've gotten up and over that, I've kind of just tried to keep the momentum up and get out of here once and for all. We're already like half an hour late to our friend's place, probably more. So the sooner I can get out of here and onto something a little more drivable. As you can see there, you can see just how slippery it is, heading to one bank and then end up heading over to the other bank. So at this point I'm stopped, decided I probably should wait for my lovely wife to catch up and get back into the vehicle. And from there it was a pretty easy run out. So this is actually what I was expecting. So that was my first visit to Tallarook. That's the first video. Look, I really recommend you get there and check it out, but do a little bit of research as to what tracks you're driving. I have been back since with Matt in his troopy, and I've posted one of those videos already. That was a really fun day out. Lots more to come there. So as always, thanks everybody for watching, and please like and subscribe to the channel if you like the content. And if you have any questions, comment down below. Thanks again, and hope you've enjoyed this video.